My humble respect to Guru Mahan, Guru Piran Sangran, Guru Piran Nyo, fellow Nyanis. Uh, Hope all of you all are doing very well today. Um, Today I will cover Mahan's teachings and the teachings on dualism a little bit more. And then we will go into some question and answer, and perhaps maybe we'll take some questions and some discussions of the webinar this morning. So, Sandosham. For the last two classes, we've been speaking about dualism, and I've always been, amazed by the uh, the depth of the knowledge in most of the religious teachings. And oftentimes, when we often are taught the ritualistic perspective, at least from a young age, like anything else, not just religion, but even if we look at when we are studying mathematics, the first thing I remember when we were taught at a very early age is how to memorize timetables, not knowing what we are going to use it for. But as time goes on, we memorize those things, and as time goes on, we start seeing the applications. Whether we go to a shop or to buy things, the timetables is very useful when calculating, whatever we have purchased, and so on. So all teachings, oftentimes, we need to intensify, and the various rituals are put in place, be it be religion, be it be mathematics, be it be anything that we want to learn. We try to, reinforce it through various practices. And the rituals is one thing, but there is as important, learning that we need to take place in all the fields, from astronomy to zoology to religion. And this perspective of moving from transitioning from the ritualistic way of practicing or learning to the introspective, contemplative, reflective, and meditative practice. This is in all religious teachings. This is in all teachings that we want to internalize and get better meaning. And we see that some, take to only the ritualistic perspective and remain at the surface level, whereas others take a much more deeper pursuit, deeper learning, and they get to the essence of this knowledge. And I'm always amazed by this picture that we see many rivers, and all rivers are transitioning to the ocean. And I often wondered, where does the river get the water from? And the essence of this river is actually the pure water, H2O. Well, why is it that we see color? Why is it we see, different shapes? Why is it we see a lot of contaminants in the water? What has happened to that pure water? And this is always, running in the mind. And all of them, when they go to the ocean, you see that the shape, the form, everything disappears. And yet there is a flow. The rivers continuously flow. And sometimes the rivers change its direction, it changes its color, changes its composition, and we see that, but nevertheless the rivers exist and the flow continues. How is this related to all of us? But at least in this we see that, as how we have many branches of knowledge, all of them, comes back to that one. Similarly, in religious teachings, we have many religions that have come across time, different times in different places by different masters. And we see that all of them, touches on the same essence. At least if we transition from that form to the essence, we'll see the same thing. So this is the discussion that we're going to have, that why is it that we don't see the essence and we are caught up in that form? And how do we transition so that we have deeper meaning? And in the last class, I spoke about, we sentient beings, we are biological beings. What does that mean? We are, you know, though we know that we have the spiritual body, but we are all caught in this material body that is this three-dimensional plus time. And everything that we do is tied to this four-dimensional material universe. So we see that though the formless, dimensionless, we've described God in its full manifestation of this infinite, formless, dimensionless, yet because that formless, dimensionless is powering this material being, we see that the mold of the material being comes out. Somewhat like, we have that, liquid gold, which is formless, but when you put it in a mold, it gets, ring and, all the different ornaments. In that same way, we see that our mind, is caught up. If our mind is caught in this material mold, we see that this formless, dimensionless, universal God also takes on that form and shape. And we see that, we see this full universe in that nature that we call. And our nature imprints on us because our entire body is from nature itself. Nature, as we know it, the material universe, is the three-dimensional plus time. And there is this dynamism within our material universe where, because of time, we see that there is birth, there is sustenance for a while, and then there's dissolution. And the entire forces of nature imprints on our biological body. Hence, we see that this universal God that we have, we imprint it with everything in nature. So we see that the forces that imprint us, that is beyond us, we give this nature, this forces, this greater aura or the greater, and we see that a lot of cultures, depict all these forces as God itself. So we see ourselves, at least in a biological sense, as a biological entity. Our body is built from the nature. We see that we are a subset of nature. And we see that as our understanding goes deeper and deeper, where does nature get all this from? And this is where we see that the role of religion and the role of masters and prophets matter, because they go deeper, that is transcendental to nature itself. And we come to this understanding of that universal God that powers nature and all of us. But somehow, as long as we are in this material platform, our mind is caught in this materiality, we see everything in this limitedness, because the material universe has its own limitations. It's structured, and it's captured in this four-dimensional universe, which has got its own limitations. So hence, if our mind is wedded and welded to this material universe, there are limitations. As we explore deeper and become more and more transcendental, we see that slowly we become transcendental to this material universe. So as we go deeper, we start seeing something very interesting. We see that what was so much imprinted through introspection, contemplation, reflection, we see that this structural change happens in our mind. Our mind that is slowly wedded and welded slowly starts separating from that material universe or becoming transcendental to this material universe. We see that our structure of our understanding of our mind and our body and our who we are becomes more and more porous. We don't see ourselves as this material being, but this material being that is that is emerging from a much more higher order continuum. And we see that porousness between, or that interlink between nature, God, and us. Though we still feel our material identity, though we feel, a part of nature with us, we still have our own personality there, but occasionally we transcend to that higher order continuum. And this happens as we intensify our meditation, as we start slowly, going transitioning from the external material universe to a more internal, and the mind slowly starts decoupling from the material world, not separating, but actually, quietening it down for a while so that it understands its own, gravity of its own state of existence. And for a short while, it is slowly observing the material world as opposed to, being part wedded and welded to the material world. And you get glimpses of this. And this is what we see in this whole notion of this bhakti leads to greater jnana. Jnana means an elevation of that intellect that is transcendental to this material universe. And slowly, slowly, one feels more nature centric. And eventually, we see that even that porousness disappears and we become one. And we see that, we see one who meditates and introspects experiences this. And you see this in a lot of the writings of many great saints and sages and Sufis and so on. So ultimately, it's all that one. And this is where the convergence leads to that converged state. And we spoke about how, true spirituality or true religiosity actually couples that material, life that we all have. And it is not a zero-sum game. Every state we have an enlightening process and awareness. And this is where, when one transitions from the rituals, achara, to the vichara, which is introspection, contemplation, reflection, and meditation, and we start divinizing both our material and our religious life, and we start seeing true spirituality, that spirit in us starts emanating in every facet of our lives. We see this, and you see that as you start, going more deeper, you have deeper understanding of yourself, nature, and God. That convergence starts taking place. I want to give you some examples to show this. Different religions, different, masters, we see differences as how we see in rivers. I'm going to give you an example. We see rivers are different forms, right? And different shapes and different colors. And I want to show you an example of this. Take a fruit. We see clearly that orange is very different from durian. We can see that in form, in smell, in taste, and everything else, right? So we see it as different. That is, and similarly, we see in the context of religion, we see that the forms of practice is very different. The rituals may be very, very different. So, and we see that, the way the rituals are done, the way, deities are presented, the way God is presented is very, very different. This is at the form level. But as we go deeper, we see something very interesting happening, right? So even the trees look very different. The leaves may look very different. The fruits definitely look very different, right? But what is really interesting is that when we see the branches, we see that the branches look similar, but if you are someone who's a botanist, you would be able to see the differences in the branches. In some cases, the leaves may be very similar, but you don't know what the fruits are. But in this case, durian and orange tree, the leaves look very different. The fruits look very different. But as you go deeper, if you go to the slightly above the surface, you see that if you see only this, the tree itself, sometimes you can see the difference, and many times you don't see the difference, right? But when you go to the roots level, the roots look similar, right? But when you go deeper down to the roots and what's powering the roots and what's giving nourishment for the roots is the same essence. So it all depends on where you are standing from. Which platform are you standing from? So if you are looking at a mind that is very material, you'd see the differences. And that's what nature has imprinted, right? But as we go deeper, we see that slowly, even the leaves may look the same. The branches may look the same. The tree may look the same, but may not be, in essence. But as you go down to the roots behavior looks very, similar. They're in search of that water. And that is a very important meaning that as you go deeper down, this roots is in search for that nourishment. And what do I mean by that? The mind that is thirsting for this nourishment are very similar, right? At the surface level, they are very different. They have different objectives, different goals, different things that they want to propitiate, different ways of doing things. But at the root level, you see that both trees are in search for that same nourishment. So when that pangs of hunger for the nourishment takes place, we see that the approaches to the same source becomes the same. And we see this is really important, that one who is in search for this knowledge, irrespective of which school of thought they are coming from or which religious basis they are coming from, that search is still the same search of wanting to acquire that nourishment or acquire that knowledge. That is why we see that though they come from different schools of thought, the explorer and the searcher or the seeker, their mindset is very similar, right? So we see that the nourishment is ultimately is the same. So, and the same nourishment is what the roots are searching for. And acquiring the nourishment, they channel it back up to the tree and the leaves and the fruits. So, though the fruits are very different, though they may taste very differently, though they may be very, very different, the nourishment is still the same. Similar to the river. Though the rivers may traverse different terrains, and the terrains determine what the shape is and the color is and so on, and we see that, but the water it carries is essentially the same. So in that same way, we see that, form is different. Rituals are very different. So different religions carry different rituals. The philosophies look very similar. If you go down to the philosophy, we see that everybody talks about universality, everybody talks about goodness, doing great things, being, all those things. So all the philosophies look very similar. If you transcend that form and you go to the essence of every teachings, you'll see that, but the essence is one. So the essence is one that powers every philosophy, that nourishes every different trees. And this is why it is really important to see the essence or the universal, infinite, substratum is able to power infinite possibilities, infiniteness, which makes up of orange tree, durian tree, a multitude of other trees. But the essence is one. But it all depends on which platform we are standing on. If we are on the ritualistic, a mind that is so caught up with this material identity, yes, we will see the differences. If we are on that philosophical level, we can agree on there are common, platforms of common knowledge. But when we go through to the essence of that, we see that we are all one. So body-wise, we are very different. Mind, sometimes we converge, but in the spirit, we are one. And this is what we see, that the whole process of dualism is that we start off as separate, but slowly through the process of bhakti leading to jnana, and jnana leading to further bhakti and intensity, we see that the convergence take place. Ultimately, we see that our mind's bandwidth expands, goes deeper, and we're able to understand what the eyes cannot see, what the ears cannot hear, what the senses cannot sense. The mind becomes more subtle to pick up that which is non-material, non-sensory, and more introspective. And this is why that introspection, contemplation, reflection, meditation, every religion talks about this vichara part. So we see that which is you, so if you are seeing differences, then which platform are you standing on? Someone who is in the sense of that essence will see, hey, I am part of this multitude. I am the orange juice, and I am the orange tree, and I am the durian, and I am the rambutan, and I am this and this. I am that one, but yet I have that infinite possibilities and potentiality to power everything. So this is at the essence level, and this is what you see in all the ultimate, realization of all the scriptures, is this sense of that universality, right? So we see that. So the question I have is that which is you? Which platform are you standing? And you see that when you touch, if in essence we are in all the platforms, you know we are that nourishment, we are the roots, the seeking, we are the tree, we are the bark, we are the leaves, we are the fruits, we are the smell, we are the all the various fragrance and the beauty and everything. We are all that one. And why is that possible? Because that essence is what we call universality, or that infinite potential and possibilities. So this whole notion of God in this multitude of forms is because of this infinite potential and possibilities. Though the rivers are very different, the rivers have no meaning if there is no water, right? So the rivers have no name if there is no water. Does not carry any, importance, right? It is no different from any other, mass of land. So in that same way, we see that this all these forms have no meanings if we do not have that the nourishment or that universal personality. And Mahans and others, the great masters and the scriptures all speak about these different forms, but gives prominence to that formless universal identity. And if the mind can go deep down to this level of understanding, the mind would not see any difference. And this is what Mahan speaks about, this universal peace sanctuary, that sanctuary that sees everything from a universal dimension. So coming back to this teachings of this true teachings of dualism, though we have different religions, they all speak about the one universal truth. So this is the thinking then, is that if the water is coming through to the river, to the oceans, and we see that they're all from the universal identity, why is it that we see differences? And how is it that we are seeing differences? And this is the question that all of us need to ask. And the answer to that is that whenever this universal identity comes in contact or becomes part and parcel of this four-dimensional universe, it has to take it has to follow the laws of that, which is essentially about this multitude forms, time, change, and so on. So while at the form level there is change and multiplicity, the essence is still the same. That's because of the laws of our material universe. Like how the mold, the iron ore or the gold, in its true form is formless. But when you put it in a mold, the laws of the mold take shape, but yet the essence is still the same. So this is what, while we see things differently, that is because of the mold of the body, the mold of the experiences that the body captures through its senses. But the intellect has the capacity and capability to transcend if it goes deep beyond that mold called the senses. And going beyond the mold is going deep down to touch that universal lens or universal peace actually in all of us. So this is the essence of both the dualism and also all the other teachings. Ultimately, there is a convergence. I want you to think about something really important, that while there is multiple rivers and it goes to the ocean, how does the river actually get the water? And this is where science is really important. That if you see, I'm going to show you, I want you to think about what that process that takes us there. You see, and perhaps maybe we can discuss this. So what Swamiji says here is that, one prays and prays, but without understanding. When you don't have the understanding, you see the differences and you have this notion that mine is greater than yours and all this various debates. But if you understood the prayers really well, if you understand the essence of the teachings, and you found that prayers inside you, the essence inside you, he says that there is no place the prayer is not there. There's no place devoid of that prayer. He says that, finally you find that sound, that vibration is the prayer. The resonation is the prayer. The rhythm is the prayer. He says that what we reverberates, while the formless, dimensionless, when it comes in contact with this material universe, you have a vibration. That vibration is also a prayer. So what prayer is there to pray? He's asked the question. If that vibration and the universal rhythm, or the universal resonance is the prayer, what is there to pray? We are that prayer. Only thing is that the mind needs to be one with that prayer. And this is where, great, a lot of the scriptures and books, the great masters say that the moment the mind is anchored on that vibration, everything becomes prayer. Everything becomes that universal truth. You see? And is there anything else that you need to do if you are that? Not at all. So this is where, as long as we are not one or connected, we always are in search for it. The moment you're connected, there is nothing else to search. You are that. So this is what Mahan's teachings, and also the understanding of true dualism. If you see the true dualism, it talks about how this bhakti leads to jnana, and slowly, slowly, the jnana expands, and you get the grace of God. The grace of God gives you that resonation, and you feel the vibration of God in every facet of your life. You become that. So this is where you see that the four vakyas come in, I am that, and so on. So this transmigration, although in the scriptures, in a lot of the dualistic teachings, they talk about the transmigration. What the transmigration is, that we see that slowly through this bhakti, our intellectual capacity and capability expands, our understanding expands, our jnana expands, to be able to understand this continuum, this higher order substratum, which we sometimes call consciousness or supreme personality, or infinite, substratum, or God. That can only be accommodated by an enlightened and inspired mind. So the whole perspective of dualistic teaching is to give us that discipline, give us that transitioning from that external pilgrimage to the internal pilgrimage, to expand our bandwidth, expand the depth of our bandwidth, so that we have that concentration to be able to go deep down within our own consciousness, to understand that the DNA of that universal personality is imprinted in us. The moment we get that vibration and our mind is resonating in that, we see that everything is a prayer, everything is that resonance, and there's no place devoid of it. Everything that we see, cognize, is the divinity itself. And this is what the true, essence teachings of all scriptures. Sandosham.